do you want to talk a little bit about like what we're doing this month of like AAPI Heritage Month?
Yes. So,
Thank you.
hello everybody. So today this is our first part of our series for Asian Queens Leading in Animation, and I'm part of Asian Queens in Animation, and we aim to empower Asian women and underrepresented gender identities within animation. So through this series, we're working with Rise Up Animation to bring you and to highlight all the amazing queens in the industry. And we're starting today with talking about directing, and we have Suzi and Josie here who are directors at Walt Disney Animation Studios, and we can't wait to hear the conversations today.
Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you, Suzi.
Yes.
Thank you,
Thank
Josie.
you so much.
Thanks for having us. And
Yeah.
I'm such a big Josie fan, so anytime I can have Josie, it's a good time.
And I'm a huge Suzi fan, so this is really fun to do. Thanks for having us.
Of course, thank you for being here. Do you want to go through and introduce yourselves a little bit? We'll start with Suzi of who you are and the role that you're playing now at Disney Animation.
Sure. My name is Suzi Yoonessi. I'm a director. I actually come from live action film. I started directing about 20 years ago. I've directed 3 features and most recently Daphne and Velma, the Scooby-Doo girls, their origin story, and have done some branded and episodic content, TV, bounced around. And I've been at the animation studio for the past 2 years. And for me, I fell in love with storytelling and learned about storytelling at a young age from my grandmother. So my parents are from Iran, and in that tradition, you usually are raised by grandma. So my grandmother told me these epic, gorgeous Persian fairy tales, and that's what turned me on to storytelling. And yeah, I just love the animated process. It's sort of the truest form of storytelling to me. So it's been incredibly satisfying to be at the studio with Josie.
Nice.
Cool. And I'm Josie Trinidad. I've been at Disney for almost 16 years now. I've always loved animation and specifically Disney. So I've always wanted to work here. So it's really a dream come true. I was born and raised in Ventura County, which is only about, I don't know, a stone's throw from north of Los Angeles. And my parents were from the Philippines. So I'm Filipino American and very proud of it. So happy Asian American Pacific Islander month to you all. And yeah, no, I always loved Disney. My parents were not quite, they were very supportive creatively. They took me to drawing classes and that sort of thing. But they sort of thought it was a hobby. And then I bamboozled them and I convinced them to let me go to Cal Arts, where I studied character animation. And after a few odd jobs in illustration and whatnot, I ended up at a story internship at Disney. So I boarded on a few films, and now I find myself in the directing seat. And I'm actually co-directing a Zootopia Plus series with Trent Correy, our very own Rise Up Animation. He also works with us at Disney, and he's a good friend of yours, Bobby. So it's yeah, that I'm so happy. We're quite busy, but I am really having a great time.
Thank you, Josie. That's awesome. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And we did have a couple of questions lined up for you, and we wanted to ask, you sort of touched upon them through the introduction and the first couple minutes, but we wanted to ask where you grew up and how it was growing up when you desired a creative career, and maybe when you figured out that this was what you wanted to do.
So
yeah.
For me, I was definitely an outsider in upstate New York. In Buffalo, there's not a lot of diversity. So we were one of very few Iranian families. But again, I think that power of storytelling was imparted to me by my grandma Nimtaj, and her stories just transcended cultural boundaries and immediately gave me this sense that like I could be a Persian princess and like I had all this possibility. And I remember in sixth grade, like, I feel like there were like a series of memories that like took me to the creative arts and like storytelling. And one of them was, I remember I was a huge Disney fan, right? I grew up with the princesses, loved them, dreamt of them. And I, in sixth grade, was cast as Snow White. And the kids started calling me Snow Brown. And I just would never forget that moment. But in terms of like, it was interesting because then afterwards, Aladdin came out. And there was this little girl who was across the hall at my music teacher's apartment building. And she started showing up every weekend at the door. And the teacher at some point was like, she shows up because she thinks you look like Princess Jasmine. And it was like from going from Snow White being told Snow Brown to like, she thinks you're Princess Jasmine. It showed me the power of these stories to impact change and how important representation is. Yeah. So for me, like that, I feel like as I start to like see these seeds and you have those memories, they're sort of like your core childhood memories that define you, whether they're like, to me, always with moments of trauma, make them your treasure is sort of my philosophy. And I was quickly into music, grew up a punk rock kid in a riot girl band. So for me, it was always the arts. Like, I think my parents actually, they did not expect me to become like the traditional, like I come from a family of doctors. My older sister's a doctor, my younger sister's a doctor. But I think for me, as they like saw me out on the streets and like playing with a punk rock band, they were like, let's just try and make sure she's home before like 2 a.m. So it was, for them, I think they didn't shut the door on the arts because they saw it was sort of my safe space, and where for me, I was able to process all of those like crazy feelings I had. So I almost feel like, as what I've found throughout my career, as I went to undergrad at San Francisco Art Institute, to grad school at Columbia, that for me, storytelling became like a sort of therapy and safe space for me to like process everything. So it's interesting because for me, the holidays are actually the hardest because it's the moment where I'm not in the creative process. So I'm like, I know most people are like, it's Christmas. And for me, I'm like, oh no. And I feel bad for my husband because I'm like, it's Christmas, because I won't have the glorious process of like storytelling and filmmaking and the arts where you're able to like unpack the baggage and the questions that you have about this crazy world.
And for me, I mean, I always wanted to be an animator. I mean, since I love Disney and I discovered the beauty of the drawings, you know, I paused. I was watching Robin Hood when I was like 11, and we paused it and it started to play frame by frame. And my friend and I were laughing because I don't know why, we just thought it was really funny that it was paused and playing. And then I looked at it and I saw these beautiful, probably Milt Kahl drawings playing frame by frame of these beautiful, beautiful animated scenes. And I realized like those are drawings and I can do that because I love to draw. And so I really kind of, I insisted that I learn how to draw really well because I wanted to be a 2D animator. And my parents, again, were super supportive of that because I think I wouldn't let them not be, you know, I was very driven.
How old were you?
I was probably like maybe a tween. And then what happened was a friend of ours, a family friend, he was living in Montreal. And he was attending Cal Arts for character animation. This was when I was like about to start high school. And he was attending character animation. Yeah, I said that. But so when we took him, we were his surrogate family. His name was Ted T. And he ended up working at Disney. And so we were Ted's surrogate family because our fathers had gone to college together in the Philippines. And so my parents, as we took him to Cal Arts and we saw all these, you know, what the character animation department was at the time. And I didn't realize, but like Yendi Tartakovsky and Craig McCracken were going to school at the same time as him, and Dean Wellens and John Ripa, who worked at Disney with us. They too were going, they were in the same class with Sergio Paulo. So it's all these like huge animation giants. I think Chris Buck, who is a current director at Disney, he also was teaching there. So I sort of realized like, this is an actual place that I can go learn animation. And I was just hell-bent on going there. So I did. I mean, I had to get straight A's in high school and in college. I went to UCLA. I studied English and art, but I always wanted to do character animation. I was determined. And so I went and I begged, I pleaded, I took out loans to go to Cal Arts. And that's it kind of put me on the hook, because like I had a ton of loans and I was like, I have to get a job. But it's good because I work really well under pressure like that. So I applied for, and there was magically a story internship. It was actually when I graduated, it was a poor time in animation. It was when 2D was sort of going away. And so I was really like, the only place that worked for me was story. Because I found out at Cal Arts, I discovered I couldn't animate very well, but I could tell a story and I could board. And I realized like boarding, you don't have to draw as well as the animators did. So, I mean, that's a long way of saying like, how did I get to where I am right now technically? But I think that I got my storytelling abilities from my dad, who told a ton of stories about the Philippines, about World War II, and about growing up. But and he obviously English was not his first language, and so he would tell all these kind of slow, boring stories to us at dinner time. But then I would see him hold court with his friends and with our family in Tagalog, in his native language. And he was really funny and really like he was really eloquent. And I didn't it was amazing to see how different he was in Tagalog versus in English. And I think I was really inspired by him to kind of tell my own stories. We're very similar, even though we have different career paths. So that's kind of how I got to be where I am today.
Amazing. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. I was like, that's really interesting. Like when someone, like you see someone hold court at like a lunch table or something like that, and your father was the storyteller. Yeah. You know, and everyone's just kind of like leaning in, that kind of stuff.
Laughing. Because I realized this when I was in high school, and I went to school here at a Catholic all-girls school, and one of my classmates, because my dad would drive us to places, she was saying, "Your dad has such a thick accent. I can barely understand him," is what she said to me. And I was, again, like a sophomore in high school. And it was the first time I realized, like, oh, my dad has an accent? I didn't know. I mean, it's my dad. It's the way he spoke. And she really kind of just bluntly said he had this horrible accent. But then I would see him holding court in Tagalog, and I was really proud of him. But growing up, there was no real pride for being Filipino American, or even Filipino. I tried to really, and even the Philippines, being colonized by Spain and the US, is this kind of great need to assimilate, which is what I think has been passed down to like my generation. But anyway, there was a lot of shame, but also like now immense pride. As a kid, I was kind of embarrassed, but now I'm like, I really wish I would have, learned a little bit more about my culture when I was a kid.
I feel that 100%, and maybe more people on the call and on the panel feel that, just kind of like when you're growing up, the difference is, what makes you different is, and honestly, what makes you different is kind of shameful and you're embarrassed by it. But kind of when you grow up and you sort of are in this industry, in this world, and have all this experience, the main thing you want to do is just kind of like represent it, or just like own it and that kind of stuff. But for some reason, like in the beginning, when you're young, I think that sort of pride is not there yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why that happens, but I don't know. I don't have the answer. All I'm saying is I went through the same thing.
We aren't exposed to other cultures, when we're young off it. Like I know in upstate New York I wasn't, but something interesting happened recently because we, at my kids' preschool, I have a 4 and 5-year-old. We wanted to do something for Persian New Year for Nowruz. And so one of the families, like we set up a half scene, which is like a display with items for the New Year. And one of the other families brought in dancers. And I've never seen my kids have such pride for their Persian part of them. And it just like with the school, I was like, I know you guys, like there's books and things like that, but there's nothing like experiencing the culture, because that's where you have pride when you see like, oh, this is the dance from this culture, and you see that and you're immersed in it, and it's suddenly you feel that pride through the arts, or like hearing the music. Like I think if there's more exposure at a young age to like all the beauty of all these different cultures, you stop feeling that like shame, because I just didn't see it in upstate New York. So I felt the same shame that you're talking about, Josie, but with my kids, it's interesting to see how that performance just like gave them such pride. And other kids too were like dancing, flicking their arms with shawls. And it was just so sweet to see them celebrating each other's culture in that moment.
That's really great.
Yeah.
Love that.
And it's such a good motivator to sort of, for us, like even for like my family or even kids right now who are immigrant children, we don't think of our culture like we think of like what are we going to pass to our kids or our nephews or our nieces if we don't know our own culture? So that's like a motivator to sort of dive into it and start learning, and to get more content representation out there. So we've gone through such a phase, with identifying with our cultures. So I just feel like it's a great motivator for us to help it be easier for the next generations.
I totally agree. There's nothing like seeing someone who looks like you, either on screen, behind the camera, and showing you that these are legitimate careers and people are making amazing work. But also at the workplace, having allies like Bobby, just being able to go, there's Bobby, a fellow Filipino American. It means so much, right? So I wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah. Monsi, do you mind asking number 4?
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
So,
go ahead. Sorry, Monsi.
Yeah, no worries. So the question we wanted to ask, this kind of is a tough one, but was there ever a situation where you were the only woman or even woman of color in the room or on a team, and how was it sort of navigating that experience? So yeah, we'd like to hear.
Yeah, I mean, having been in the industry for a while now, it happens all the time, and it's so nice now that there's more representation or more of an awareness of what to say, what not to say. But definitely throughout my career, whether it's like pitching on a film or trying to explain yourself and why a female character might think X, Y, Z, it's something that's real, because we see through different lenses. So it's hard when you're noted in particular on like, well, I don't think she would, and you're like, you like to be able to say that. So it's nice to have colleagues like Josie, just to like, because you have shared experience, you have a shared lens, and having to speak to that is just, it is a thing, and to navigate.
Yeah, when I was at Disney, when I first started, when I went to CalArts, it was very diverse, I must say. There's a lot of international students, a lot of folks from Korea, so it was really great. And as a freshman, we had the biggest class, which was around 80 students. And there were 50% men and women at the department. So at CalArts, I didn't experience that sort of being the only woman in the room. It was only when I got to Disney, that in 2004, that it was really stark. Like the contrast was kind of shocking. So the majority of projects early on, I was truly the only woman, especially in story. It's a white male dominated world at the time. But that's totally changed, which is wonderful. But I had, at the very least, I had a mentor who was a fellow mentor, was Stevie Wormers. And she was a woman. She was on a lot of the shows that I was on. So it was great to have her. And then, like I said, like in the story department, there were other Filipinos. And so I could always just vent to them, even if you just have one buddy that you can talk to and just be open about. It really just helps. And then I think what weirdly it gave me, because I was the only woman on a show, it gave me the confidence, as we were working on princess movies and I was the only female, like I could say like, no, I've been in that person's shoes, the character's shoes. I can speak from an authentic place and none of you can. And so I would speak up and say, no, that isn't right, or that doesn't feel right. This is, I lost this battle on Tangled, but her hair being super long was a thing, obviously. And I was like, I'm sorry, but if my hair was that long, I mean, even when it gets to like past my waist, like half down my back, I'm like, this is too much hair. And I'm like, I would put it up. I would do something with it, because I would not be traipsing around the forest with that train of hair. And I wouldn't go barefoot, like I was just like, but all the men were like, no, sorry, it looks great. We're not gonna make that change. But I was like, okay. I just kind of felt like it's like democracy. Like if you don't vote, then you can't really have like your vote is it makes your voice count. You know what I mean? Like, so that I realized like if I don't say anything, then I'm gonna regret it. And sadly, I had to represent like women of color and women in general in those rooms. And so I just felt like I had to say things. And yes, I was shot down a million times, but it sort of made me resilient. And I was usually very quiet and very timid growing up in an Asian household. You don't speak up to your elders, it's very, you don't sass. So when I started, I was like, excuse me, I want to say something. But I realized very quickly, like in the story room, that wasn't going to fly. Like I had to speak up. I had to be loud. I had to project. So it was like I feel like it could either swallow you whole or make you stronger. And I chose to to be stronger for it. So, yeah.
Amazing. I'm just kind of wondering too, because how do you, and this is just kind of like my personal like aside too, of like, how do you, in the beginning, it sounds like you're kind of like me, of just kind of like, really shy and kind of like, really introverted. Like, how do you, I don't know, like what was your experience digging deep, and then sort of kind of finding a version of yourself that can sort of be expressive in the room, that kind of stuff. Like, what was that experience for you? And this can apply to Josie and Suzi as well. It's just kind of like digging deep and kind of finding this person that just able to speak up, man. Because it's not
It's
even
like getting out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Being in story, you have to pitch, right? You have to pitch your sequence. And when I started, we were not working digitally. We were working like on boards. So you pinned up your stuff and you had to like sit there with a pitch stick. And there's this really cool drawing, I think that Joe Ranft did, of like, or maybe it was Vance Gary, where they had little tips of like, you should stand in front of the board. You should like pitch it the way you feel like it's going to be in a movie. And so in a way it was like acting. So normally I'm very quiet, but like for the pitch, I would kind of do the performance and then afterwards be very exhausted. So that was how I was able to at least kind of muster up the courage. I've heard other folks who are very shy will, take a shot of something, drink a little something just to loosen them up a little bit. If you've seen that movie, Another Round, which is just won the best international feature, where they drink a little bit just to become uninhibited, just a tad. It's sort of that sort of philosophy, but it's hard. I gotta say, it's super hard, especially for introverts. It's exhausting, but it's part of the job, I guess, for story. And as a director, Suzi, you've gone around and pitched things to executives and stuff, so you're sort of also used to that parade.
Yeah, and it's interesting for directing and being in the room. If you have someone who's more of an introvert or shy, I think just creating the space for them to speak, because even, you know, I feel like because I grew up in this loud Iranian family where everyone's trying to talk on top of each other, it's like, you know, I always grew up with that. But even, you know, recently I was in a meeting and I was like noticing, I was like, wow, yeah, the guys like speak a lot. And the woman who was running the meeting was like, Suzi, what do you think? You know, and I just love that. Cause I was like, you know what, that's sometimes, cause, you know, it's great to have the voices, hear the voices, but also to make space for people who might not, you know, because it's great to have like a mixture of personalities, but I also like am very aware in the story room to make that space for people who might not speak and give them a turn just because someone's not like it's a different way of processing. And oftentimes when that voice comes out, it's like the most concise, accurate, problem solved like voice you might find sometimes. So having that balance and making that space, I think, regardless of like extroverts, introverts, who you're working with, making the space for their voice to be heard.
I love that, Suzi, because you're kind of speaking to like yourself and Josie as leaders. You're running the room and you identify and you're very aware of like the room that and then going, what do you think? You know, you haven't said anything in a bit, like, you know, like there's a lot of people talking and that kind of stuff, but like, what do you think? You haven't said anything in a while. Like, what is your opinion on the kind of stuff that's very, you know, sensitive to the vibes of the room? I think that's great. That's great.
And I think, I mean, off of that, I think it's also important for us as like, whatever your background might be, like championing other filmmakers, like for me, championing female directors, such an important thing. You know, at the Directors Guild, we have different groups, like there's the Women's Steering Committee, there's this African-American group, and you see the power of when you like band together and champion each other, there is great impact, and especially, you know, in the television field, because there's so much opportunity to empower people to have those opportunities. But I think when you are put in that position, it is like the only way we see change is by empowering and championing different voices, because otherwise we are in an industry where people are so averse to taking risks. But their idea of risks, you know, I've gone through so many diversity programs, like through the years. I think I had gone through 6, and even so much so that I directed a couple of TV episodes, and I was in the room with a network, and they were like, I was meeting with them about a TV show and directing on it, and then they stopped and they were like, you know, we're having this new diversity program, but are you too experienced? And I literally directed episodes of TV, and I was like, yes, I am too experienced for that, and you should offer it to someone who has not directed an episode of TV. But the importance of like, because people just want to do the safe thing of like, oh, well, we could just put this diverse director who's directed a couple episodes in the diversity program. And it's like, no, that's not the point of these programs. So I think it's important for us, once we like sort of are at that place where you can start to like shine a light on us, you know, with these programs, yes, so well intentioned, but sometimes they become now this way to filter people to the program instead of like, wait, but if I was a guy who just made my first feature, you wouldn't put me in the program. So are you going to start having the like white male director program where they have to go through the program before directing TV? Like, it's a very, again, well-intentioned, but having an awareness that we can't use these programs as crutches for reasons for not hiring people from diverse backgrounds or different voices and faces.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And one other question we had, just sort of tying to that, is since you started, how has inclusion and diversity changed within the industry since you began, whether like off and on screen, and what can we do to make it better?
I mean, I think even off of that with those programs, it has changed because they used to put people in the programs and not give them jobs. So now it's changed where a lot of these programs, you have to give someone a job afterwards, which I think is so important because I have this friend, she shadowed on TV and she had to do 6 episodes and didn't get a job. And I was like, to sit and watch for 6, like that's not, so that has absolutely changed. So I'm so impressed. And I also think, you know, definitely at the animation studio, there's such an effort to champion the idea of nothing about us without us, and putting those faces behind the screen that match the story, that can speak to the story, that can speak to what's being portrayed. There's such an incredible effort to find and champion new talent, and doing like talent based off talent, not exact experience, like experience, right?
Yeah, and I've been part of, you know, I've always kind of been part of hiring or looking at portfolios, story portfolios, and I've noticed a huge kind of difference from when I started until now. I mean, certainly there when in a department of like 40-ish folks, there were only 2 women, and now it's nearly 50-50, which is fantastic. Sometimes there's even more women than men, like when we hire interns and stuff like that. So, and also, and just more diversity overall. I think it's really changing. So that's been incredibly encouraging for me, because I tend to be very pessimistic about change. Just because at Disney, since our movies take so long, like you don't necessarily see the change immediately, right? But I will say now, like Suzi, it's vastly different and really exciting. So I mean, it's wonderful.
That's so nice to hear. I'm so excited for the new content that's coming, because as a child, it was just like we just had Cinderella, or, you know, characters we didn't really necessarily relate to. So now that people are having these characters like Moana and Raya and all these, I can't wait for Halloween to see people dressed up as Raya. Oh, it's gonna be so beautiful.
Oh my God, I have on my Insta stories, my kids had a couple friends over yesterday. It was like the first time kids are hanging out without masks post-pandemic. The 6 of them were doing a Raya movie reenactment for maybe 30 minutes. It was incredible. We have the soundtrack playing, and they were like, no, we're Sisu, we're all the dragon. And they started running in a circle like that. It was so beautiful and cool, and it was like a diverse group just celebrating that film and that score in such a inspiring way. And my daughter definitely has been like, I'd like the Raya outfit, Mom. And I'm like, hey, well, you know, we have so many. I'm trying to push and hold till the next holiday, but it's pretty cool to see these diverse faces, especially because my daughter has those like princess stuffies, and just to see mixed within them like Raya and Moana, it's much more assuring versus like when she's like, Mom, why, you know, I remember for a little bit I didn't have the Raya one since it just came out. We got the Moana one, but she was so upset that her hair wasn't white. It's like, this is not great, you know, like I was like, okay, time to order the Moana doll so she sees like it's not all this one thing that we can aspire to be, you know.
That's awesome. I had really quickly. Doug Mara, are you there? I hope you guys don't mind like going in and out of like live Q&A, like questions from the attendees. Is that okay? Is that cool? Let's make it more interactive. Doug Mara, hello? Are you there? Ish. Oh, ran away. Okay, cool. How about Mono? Mono?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yay! Hi, everyone.
Hi. Hello. Thank you for your question.
Yes. Thank you for having this session. It was really, really insightful. Also, as a female of color, interested in storytelling and directing her own, animation films or short films one day, but with no formal training, is there anything that you would, give us advice or, showcase resources to, as to how someone could, go into more of this field of directing and getting their stories out there, but with no formal training?
I think the internet is so powerful and incredible in social media. So the ability to at least put yourself out there and start building your body of work so that people can fall on it. So if you have a story, even if it's doing it as a podcast, right, which is not a crazy amount, but if you have a great story, put it to a couple of still images, something that like people love great stories told well. So I think refining your storytelling skills, even like in podcast form with some drop, like people, if you do something impactful, now you have ways to like tag someone and get it seen by a wider audience because people are sort of a click away. So I don't think everything needs to be totally flushed out and flashy if you have a great story.
Yeah, I agree with that. I remember, Suzi, you brought that podcast idea up and I thought it was brilliant. You have to make things, tell stories. I mean, write them down, tell them to your friends, try to hold court. And another thing that I do, and I did especially as a student, was like watch movies. I devoured content, movies, short movie films, TV shows, and then I would discuss them. Like I would analyze, like what did I like, what didn't I like, why, and then kind of just analyze film and or TV series. I think that will go a long way. Read things, but I think if you definitely want. If you want to get into directing, I mean, animation itself, if you want to do animated content, I mean, there's a whole kind of toolkit that you need to learn that's very specific, I think. And I think there's a whole kind of world that you need to go like, well, what am I good at in animation? What do I like? Is it story? Is it storyboarding? Do I like animating? Do I like design? So there's that whole other realm that you can learn at school, online, like Suzi's saying, but it is a whole like endeavor, I will say. But in order to just tell stories and tell stories well, like Suzi's saying, and to kind of analyze character, I mean, you can get that by just doing things, making things, experiencing life and that sort of thing. And yes, there's a lot of chat. There's a lot of classes online. Mike Rianda, who's brilliant, he gave the Rise Up Animation series. There's a lot of resources, the commentary on DVDs or like stuff on YouTube. Like these are all great resources to learn about the craft of filmmaking and storytelling. And I would say devour it all. You can never learn too much, I would say.
Thank you.
Matsu, do you want to go to a Q&A question or do you want to go to our questions that we had?
Sure, we can go to a Q&A question. I see a lot of really good ones here.
Okay, cool. And then let's see. I promoted some people to panelists. Let's see. Melissa Young, are you on the call still?
Here.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you guys for doing this.
Hmm.
I,
What was your question, Melissa?
well, I was just wondering, like, how did you guys get the chance to direct? Like, did you pitch your ideas first, or did someone ask you?
Yeah, you know, I started by, writing on the page ideas and really starting to work on a script and idea. And simultaneously, I would be doing short films to get practice. My journey was a little bit different because I would also start to work on sets, like assisting producers, just because I wanted to make money, assisting producers, write on my own to refine story and understand the power of story and the sort of structure of a film, a feature film in particular, and then making shorts so I could start to understand film language, what's, how do you tell a story, what are the frames, what are the lenses, and so that was sort of that's getting that experience and doing it and doing it again, doing it again, and doing it again, because each time you learn from your mistakes and you're building your muscles as a director and as a storyteller and filmmaker. You start to see oh, this is a repeat beat. The more you do it, you start to see where the holes are or what obstacles you might have. But if the I would say quickest way to get into the industry is probably, and the cheapest way, is a great script and story. If you write an incredible script and story, there are all these stories about people at all ages, just having that script that people love great new stories. So pen to paper is just, if you have a story that you love and you want to tell, I would just say get How to Write a Screenplay in 21 Days. That's, there are all these agencies that are always looking for scripts, and that to me is probably the cheapest way inside of the door. And then you sort of start to get your opportunities for directing based off of I have this great script, or this TV series idea, but and then I pivot to the trying to direct it myself, but that at least is from my path. But I know Josie's is probably totally different in terms of how do you get your foot in the door and get your first opportunity to direct a feature or series, a TV series.
Yeah, if we're talking about animation, I think it's really doesn't take much equipment or anything to kind of think of ideas, write them down, think of characters, start to do drawings of them in your own sketchbook, and think of scenarios, even if they're just 90 seconds or 30 seconds, that's storytelling. A character with a goal, but there's an obstacle in a way, and then there's a surprising ending. That's as simple as it is. And even comedy, it's about the setup and the payoff. So I think animation, especially, and film in general, you can go and shoot things on your iPhone, right? So I think at Disney, how do you pitch ideas and then get tapped to direct? There are programs like the Short Circuit, which many folks have done, where you do pitch ideas to folks at the studio, and then they choose people to make their shorts. And it doesn't matter what department you're in. You can be in HR, you can be an animator, you can be in story. Folks get tapped to direct their own projects, which is really, really cool. And then, you just kind of keep on going up, and then there's kind of short films. And I think the short circuits are 90 seconds or something like that. And then there's short films, which I think you have to prove yourself at the studio and prove yourself to be a great storyteller. And then you sort of get tapped. But I think with Disney Plus and all the new alternative content, the doors are opening wider and wider, and it's really exciting, the potential, because, you know, they definitely want to create great content. And that's where like having diverse people, having all these different backgrounds is really interesting to me, because that's where you can get all these new great stories. So I think you definitely have to pitch your idea. To answer your question, you do have to pitch your ideas before you can direct, and that's all kind of a part of the process.
Okay. Would it be okay if I ask just one more question? I'm sorry. Well, you said anyone at the studio can pitch. Like,
Mm-hmm.
do you think it would be a good idea to become an animator first?
Yeah, I think it depends on what you like to do and what your strengths are. And so whether that's, because I think, you know, Bobby, you come in as both a character designer and an animator, you know, and a director. So I think, Melissa, really look at yourself and your skill set and what you really love to do, and what you're good at, you know, because you could definitely be a rigger, or, you know, a modeler. You can do layout, which is like cinematography. You can do lighting, which is like painting, and also part of cinematography. So whatever you sort of like the most and you gravitate towards the most, I think, or you could be a writer, you could be an editor. So there's so many different fields within animation that I think I encourage people to find their strength and then really go deep and really like try to be a master, you know, to really excel at that skill. And then you'll find your way, because in animation, directors come from layout, character design, animation, story, screenwriting, you know, live action. So there's just so many things. There's no one direct path.
Okay. Thank you guys so much.
Sure.
Do we want to continue with questions, Masi? So I know, Suzi, you have like 7 minutes, so we're going to respect that. But Rachel Ghana, my friend, are you there? Do you want to come on and ask your question?
Sure.
Hey, good to see you.
Hi.
Hi.
Good to see you all. My question is, what would you say are qualities that make a great director, and how to like foster those skills, and maybe even like skills that you didn't know that you needed until you like did the job?
I'm going to defer to Suzi, because you've directed more than I have.
I think having a vision, you know, having a vision and strong communication skills. Or I guess the thing is, vision more important than that, because you can always find someone also that you can partner up with who could do the communicating, but also understanding the idea of like instincts. You know, having good instincts, I think, is important, but having those instincts can apply to like what's your gut instinct of the way to go, but also instinctually, who do you want to surround yourself with? Because so much of directing is building a team and surrounding yourself with the best people to tell your story. So that's in storytelling and understanding like conflict resolution, character arcs. Emotional truth is such a big one. You know, with directing, it's just, there's so many tools in the toolbox. I think also like being able to admit you are wrong is important to the happiness and health of like your team. Like understanding, you know, as you grow as a director too, you just learn, you start with certain skills and then they build and build and build, like lenses. What are great lenses that to tell a story? How visually? What's the way you can use a camera to like give you the feels? So, but these are all like, you sort of start with like the core of like vision and story, and then you can like build on that, and you learn a lot just through the experience. And I think even coming to these is like incredibly important in hearing people's process. I go to the Directors Guild does all these series with the directors. I go to every single one, because like to learn from Bong Joon-ho, 100%. Like learning from other people. I want to know all of Josie's tricks and tools. Like the more I can hear about them, awesome, because you as a director, as a storyteller, as a filmmaker, you hear from other people and you're like, you know what, this one aligns with me. I'm going to put this in my toolbox. This tool, not so much. so you'll hear, but you'll get a sense of what's right for you as a storyteller. And I think kindness too, so important. Kindness, just, you know, it's a long road on these animated projects. So
I agree with all of those. Those are all great. Maintaining that clear vision, because it's really hard. In animation on a feature, they take, 4, 5, 6 years. So sometimes people get, the energy wanes and they lose their focus and vision. So I would say that's probably one of the most important things. But also, this is like listening to people, being open, like having that vision, but then being open-minded. But then being able to kind of filter the notes and not just follow everything, because that'll lead you nowhere. So it's like being able to kind of separate the good from the bad, or what, kind of what we always say is like find the note behind the note. And so you don't necessarily have to follow their exact advice because it might not work for you, but like there's a truth to what they're saying. They might be missing something. And it can be technical. Sometimes I'm like, they're confused because of the setup. It's like, it's not the scene, it's actually the setup or what's coming before or after it. Or sometimes it's just like, it is some kind of deep emotional, like universal truth that you're not speaking yet, And then that kind of like is about how to go back and refine without like sort of losing everything that you want to do. So it's hard. And I think that's why starting small is great. Like starting with a small film, starting with a short story or whatever that is. And then kind of growing and learning from there. Because I think you don't learn if you don't make stuff, if you don't tell stories and you don't create content, because you'll get better and better with each one. Even if you can board it, you can do comics, you can do so many great things to tell a story. And then in a way, even, and as a board artist, you're sort of a sequence director. So, because they're all kind of steps to becoming a better filmmaker or director. We're almost at time, Susie. I know you have to go at noon if you want to do one last thing or.
So, yeah. We'll let Susie go, and then.
Thanks for having me, you guys, and it was so nice talking to you all. And thank you, Bobby. Thank you, Muncie, for having me here. And Josie, great seeing you.
It's always great to see you, Susie.
Thank you.
Awesome. Good luck. Okay. Yeah. Josie, what's your? What day is it today?
It's Saturday,
Oh,
May
Saturday.
1st. I'm cleaning up drawings for Zootopia Plus.
Awesome. Okay.
No. So I'm just sitting here like drawing. Ignore me. I'm sorry. I'm not looking at the camera.
No. It's okay. Monty, what do you think? We'll keep Josie for like. Do you want like one more, 2 more questions?
Let's do a couple more, and then we'll call it a day.
Awesome.
Can I ask one more, or do you want to go on to the next?
Yeah.
Totally up to you.
Okay. Josie, I was wondering how development is going. And yeah.
It's good. It was really kind of shocking and hard at first. I will say I was not used to it. I'm used to, because I was head of story on a couple features, and like, I'm used to like the mad dash. I'm really used to working under the gun, under the pressure. And so development it's such a different pace. It's a lot slower at Disney, I will say. And I wasn't used to that. I think perhaps I had PTSD, and I was sort of just really too nervous. And also like the idea of a feature is really daunting. And so I'm super grateful that they partnered me with Trent Correy, because what I wanted to do was actually learn the other departments, because I've never been outside of story and editorial. And I've done a little bit of like been in meetings with layout, which is, you know, the cinematographer, they help set up the shots, but that's it. I've never worked with animators or anything. So Trent comes from animation. So it's really, I just felt just personally, I wanted to do these shorts because then I can learn about these other positions and what other folks do, because it's such a collaborative effort. There are VisFX soups and tech anim and, you know, all these different departments that beyond animation that I'm like, I have no idea that they did that. and I'm so fortunate at Disney that they're the best at what they do. So I don't have to worry. You just sort of have to get out of people's way and just tell them what your vision is and what you are thinking here, and where they can kind of be flexible, and where you're like, no, it absolutely must look like this, you know? So it's really, it's been great to kind of have that experience. Right now we're locking story like at the end of May, end of this month. So I'm in my zone. Like I know this world of screenings and pitching and redoing notes. Like I know that crazy cycle. And I'm excited to work with animators and to just see it kind of come to life, and to listen and learn from Trent about how to direct animators. So it's really fun, because then I know that I can translate that, or at least feel more confident going into a feature, just at least understanding the basics. So I like to do my homework. What can I say? I'm very nerdy. And so I feel like I wouldn't be able to, you know, they say fake it till you make it. I'm like, no, you have to know. There has to be knowledge, true understanding before you can actually try it.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's exciting. All right, I'll let someone else ask a question. Thanks, Josie. Nice to see
No
you.
problem. Nice to meet you.
Dagmara, you had.
Are you back?
You want to come back, Dagmara? Nowak? If you're there with audio and video, it's okay if not. Nothing. Okay, cool. So what do you think, Monty? Should we go on with?
Yeah, we can keep doing audience questions. I think. What else is there? There are a couple questions here.
Let's see.
Well, this is all so insightful. I'm learning so much.
Yeah. Did we get to Kingsley's question? Kingsley's song?
No, we did not.
Okay, Kingsley.
That's a good question.
Yeah, there we go. Hi, Kingsley. Hello, hello.
Hi, everyone. It's nice
Hi,
to meet
Kingsley.
you. Yeah.
Thanks for being here.
No, thanks for having this. And thanks to Bobby and Monty for putting this together. It's been so,
Amen.
yeah, it's amazing. Even though I joined a little bit late since I got my first dose of the vaccine, it was
Wow.
so super exciting. So,
Nice.
woohoo. But yeah, I don't know if you've already answered this, and also I know it's probably a question that you get a lot, so it's okay if you don't want to answer it. But I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit to sort of like, I guess, what's the most rewarding thing, and like what's the most challenging thing that you've experienced specifically as a woman of color, like in a directing position? Because I think, I know, I'm just curious to hear, because I think as someone who's looking to pivot into animation, and like, you know, I'm technically like not at like an art school, I already feel like a lot of imposter syndrome on top of like, you know, being a person of color, being like a non-binary person, all these different things. And so I would just love to hear like your own personal experiences with that. And yeah, thanks in
Yeah.
advance. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm like the poster child of imposter syndrome. There was even a book, it's at the studio, I can't remember, it's a terrific book about imposter syndrome and how so many people, amazing people like, oh, golly, I think like actors, you know, and novelists and stuff, they also suffer from imposter syndrome. I even put up, I gathered pictures of them, and it's on my wall at the studio. But it was almost reassuring to realize like, oh, I think everyone has imposter syndrome in the creative field. You know, like when I started at Disney, I was so bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and super excited. And we as all of us new interns were kind of taking a tour of the building, we saw Glenn Keane, who, if you all don't know, he's an amazing, brilliant god of animation, right? And Glenn saw us and was like, oh, look at you. Oh, you look so cute and you're so excited. I remember my first day at Disney and how I felt like I was an imposter and I really didn't belong there, and someone was going to tell me that they had made a mistake and fire me. And so when I heard Glenn Keane kind of felt that way, I just was like, oh my gosh. I think it was a very natural feeling. Stevie Wormer's my mentor also felt that way. She said the same thing, like, I think someone, you know, an accountant or whoever, like in HR, they made a mistake and they're gonna fire me any day now. And so it was reassuring to hear that. One of the most rewarding things is I think I've been able to like surround myself with other like-minded folks and also women of color, you know, LGBTQ, and just anyone who I'm comfortable with, which has usually been those on the fringes that I've always sort of gravitated towards, I've always felt like. And so I'm including those folks in the room with me now to tell our story. And that's been really fun. You know, that's been so rewarding. And it's also, I mean, it's rewarding, like when you create something to see when it works, like in story, you know, like, because it always never works for a very long time. In the boards, it works. And then you cut it together in reels and it's the worst thing you've ever seen. It's embarrassing and you want to quit. But then when you keep at it and improve it and adjust things, add new dialogue and new drawings, when it makes people laugh or when you know it's hitting emotionally, it's so rewarding. And I would say one of the challenging things is, as a woman of color, and also an Asian, I'm very short, I'm 5'3", and sometimes I'm surrounded by tall people, you know, like physically in the room, I will be, you know, we'll be kind of talking in a circle and people are just physically taller and bigger than me. So I'm either looking up at the conversation or like some, you know, people are larger and I'm like, can barely kind of see behind people. But it's moments like those that like in Zootopia, Mayor Bellwether's the little kind of villain sheep that you learn in the end, sorry, spoiler alert. But like when Bellwether's trying to like peer into the group, I put those things in there because I know, like, I'm like, that's what I experienced. You know, I know how this villain feels because I have felt that way. And I have, you know, become angry. I've also been determined to change things. So the hard part is that on a daily basis, you know, there are people who will speak over you, you know, that men tend to speak first, like Suzi's saying. They're just more confident and they do that. And I tend to kind of not do that. So it can be frustrating, you know, it can be sometimes infuriating as a director that I'm like, I'm in the room here, you know, like, why are you not listening to me? So when I'm tired, I get frustrated, I get upset. But I know it's never intentional, you know? And so I try to go like, don't do this Khaleesi kind of burn everyone to a crisp and get super angry. You know, just know that people are, they don't intend, you know, no one ever, it's never as kind of personal as I make it out to be in my own mind. And so I just tend to like, calm down, collect yourself, you know, roll with the punches. And also, but next time, let them know you're there. You know, so you might have to speak up louder. You might have to kind of make your point. You might have to do things that feel uncomfortable for me, certainly. It's to raise my voice or to be mean, gasp, you know, to be critical of people. It's really hard for me to do that, but I know that I have to because it'll just piss me off. So that's kind of in a huge nutshell all the different emotions that I face on a daily basis. It's exhausting, but really very, very fun.
Yeah, I can only imagine that. Thanks for sharing that.
Great question, though. I think one of the questions here was like, how can we have more? What is it? What can we do to help encourage more diversity in the industry? And it's honestly having more folks like you, and not necessarily like, I just don't mean like, oh, we just need to hire all non-white folks. Like, I mean, I feel like there's a diversity of thought, and however that looks, I think that's kind of the most important thing to have. And for studios, for folks to apply, one, to put yourself out there and to make sure that your work is really strong. But two, for studios to hire you, to be open and to look beyond experience and things like that. And to realize that, I hate the words risky, like, oh, should we take that risk? And I'm like, yes, you should, because that's an amazing leap to take to find the next generation.
And
Thank you for your question. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. I think your response is like so powerful to hear, just like, especially in your conversations about like bringing more people to the table and like being able to assemble a bunch of people who, have that diversity of thought, who are willing to like put in the work to like make something really incredible. And I think, it was just interesting to hear like sort of the own dynamics that you've experienced in terms of like being physically shorter, for example, and I think especially like that can also be racialized too. It's like, if I speak up too much, does that mean I'm too angry, or I'm like that loud person? So it's wild to hear that like you're also experiencing this like as a director, and it's just interesting to hear. So thank you for sharing that, because it's not easy for sure.
Of course.
Yeah. Monty, what do you think? Do you want to go to Dagmara?
Yeah, sure.
Dagmara. Sweet Dagmara.
And I totally relate to being short. I'm 5'2", and all the work I've been doing like within animation has been virtually. So I'm very scared of going in person and then like finding out how tall people are.
Me too.
Like, oh my God, you are so tall. Like, I had this friend who in the call, she looks pretty short, but then she told us she's 5'11", and we were like, what?
Oh my gosh. I'm working with a writer right now who she's Taiwanese. And so I'm like assuming she's short like I am. And she goes, no, I'm like 5'11" or 5'10". And I dread the day I have to meet her in person, where I'm like, oh my gosh, you make me feel
like we have to learn how to wear heels.
I feel that pain. Dagmara, I love your question.
I mean, like, what do you think, Fonzie? Like, last question or second last, or?
I think
Josie.
second last would be good. 2 more questions would be good.
Okay. Dagmara, I'm excited.
Hi, I'm sorry for my English first. That's why I'm a little scared now. But I want to ask how to pitch idea for movie to Disney with my culture.
I love that.
Because this is for me very, very important. I haven't someday ago made petition to Disney for movie with my culture. So I'm asked how.
Well, unfortunately, Disney is, they do not take unsolicited submissions. So it's really tough. You have to be sort of in the Disney family, work for one of the studios companies, right, Bobby? Like Bobby's at TVA and stuff, and I'm at Feature. So I do get this question a lot, Dagmara. I'm really sorry to say that even if you emailed me stuff, I have to forward it to legal and say like, sorry, we can't accept these submissions. But that said, what Suzi was saying really resonated with me, which was make things yourself, put the content out there, whether it's a screenplay, whether it's a pitch, and then you can take it to other studios for sure, right? Like Netflix is a very open and welcoming home to idea submissions. So I would say Disney is a bit, the way they are, but please do not let that stop you from pitching your idea and getting it out into the world. I think it's really important for you to reach, to put your content out there. I want to see it. And so I hear some advice here that says, make a short film, pitch it with a partner, and that sort of thing. It's not easy to break into the industry by any means. But the first step is to put the pitch together and go shop it around, right, Bobby?
Yeah, 100%. And Dagmar, like anything I could say is just echoing what Josie just said. I'm just kind of like, Disney, we're both at Disney, but Disney doesn't have to be the end all be all of like making your project, right? Put it out there online, and whether there's like so many different studios, with like whether Disney's kind of like reaches out to you or not, that's not the end of your idea and your storytelling. So like everything else, I mean, like, in Rise Up Animation, we encourage people to tell your own stories, and that sounds exactly what you want to do. So you don't need Disney to do that. You know what I mean? You don't need them to do that. Put your stories out there, put them out online for everyone to see. So, and it's really satisfying when you do. I mean, like sharing your stories with the world. Oh my gosh, it's amazing.
And social media definitely changed the way you can do things. Like you can just put it on YouTube or even like Instagram or TikTok or anything, and that's a way of storytelling in the modern age.
100%. Yeah, 100%. Did we get to is this the Jamina Legaspi? Did we get to that one?
I don't think so.
Let's see, sorry.
But thank you so much for being so flexible with your time, Josie. We really appreciate it. We're learning so much.
Yes.
I was just listening to a panel with Rich Moore. I worked with Rich. He's a Simpsons
I miss
veteran.
Him so
much. And when Jim Reardon, they did like a Simpsons kind of reunion, and Rich said something that I really resonated with me, among many other things, which was that you sort of pay it forward. Like the animation community always wants to share knowledge, and like no one's really greedy about like hiding our information. Like, so passing on stories and learning, like passing on just tips and stuff like that has always been a part of the animation community. Even like in story right now, we're like, hey, does anyone have this brush? And we're like giving each other tips, and like, hey, I'm having this problem. And like with Slack, we've been able to kind of keep in touch. So I really love that about the animation community, that we're all really open about sharing all these fun things. And it's really, what's interesting is that it's not ever anything like groundbreaking, you know what I mean? Or like really secretive. It's like, oh, we're working hard, like putting yourself out there. And I love what you said about like TikTok videos, and like the new age of storytelling is such a cool way to get content out there.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Hi, Jamina. Hello.
Hi, everyone.
Jamina. Hi.
Thanks for putting me in the session, I guess.
Thanks for turning on your camera and doing it. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Hi.
This is so exciting. This is actually the first time that I'm joining a Rise Up Animation panel, and
cool.
This is great, especially hearing from fellow Filipinos as well. It's just so inspiring. Okay, so my question is, so I'm originally from the Philippines, but I'm based in Qatar, and in Qatar, animation isn't so appreciated, really. So it's really a struggle for me, and my background is more in live action now.
Okay.
But I have a lot of ideas, like animated shorts, and I was just wondering if you have any advice for people who are based, internationally, who are not in the US, because I feel like there are a lot of opportunities,
yes,
for animation, but they're usually like, oh, you have to be based in the US, or you have to be legally allowed to work in the US and all that.
Yep.
So it's really a struggle. So right now I'm just, trying to create my content, but it's more of like reaching out and networking, and I guess any advice in that regard would be great. Thank you.
That is really hard. I mean, having family that in the Philippines, it's always trying to come here and immigrate, and just knowing how difficult it is, I understand wholeheartedly the challenges of not like trying to make content and put it out in the world, but also having there be an international barrier, which is unfortunate, because that's also part of diversity, is like non-Western or non-United States kind of centric storytelling. There was something interesting that happened with Disney Plus, which was, there's a studio called Kugali Media, and they're based in, I believe it's Nigeria. And they were making comics and video games, and they wanted to get into animation. And I think they said something like, we want to beat Disney at their game. Like, we want to make a Disney princess or something. And they were featured in the New York Times. And that got the attention of the folks in development at Disney, who said, well, let's talk to them. Because what was cool was they were like, Kugali Media, the brilliant folks there said, like, we're a little tired of seeing African stories being told by those not from Africa who don't live there. And so we want to tell our own stories. And Disney kind of was like, we agree, you should tell your own stories. And this, like, Disney Plus was a way for the studios to connect and for them to create. They're like creating a series right now that's going to come out. And I think it's Disney trying to get into that game, which this is all like, I'm not informed at all, but like Netflix is doing, which is where they're like starting to reach out to content in India and, you know, all over the world. So to me, I think you're absolutely doing the right thing, Jamina, which is like building your portfolio, building your content, your stories, and working on them and honing them. And because we're all very connected on the internet and like with the pandemic through Zoom, like the barriers are starting to fall away. And so, you know, like, how do you get it out there? I don't know exactly the path, but I know that there are ways to kind of, you know, either join different like film groups, you know, and try to like network. You're right. That's absolutely a brilliant way to kind of to find those connections. Yeah, like, and I don't know what that, like, who is that person that you can email who works at the various studios that can get you you know, set up meetings. Sometimes I think being like creating a short film or something can then make it so that people start to go, hey, and take notice. So I would say that's one of the, like, I'm always like, what are the things you can control and what are the things that are just out of your hand? And the things that you can control, which is like, by gosh, no one's going to come knocking on my door to say like, hey, we want you to make a film, but I can go knocking on other people's doors and like just being dogged about that. And really trying to go and talk to a lot of folks, I think, or just connect with them, or, you know, send them a message on Instagram, or, you know what I mean, or on their website. And it's amazing because the animation community is very open and generous. And they, unless they're super busy, you know, they're really kind and respond, or, you know, or when we're not in the pandemic world, like, I don't know how easy it is for you to travel, but to go to different festivals or Comic-Cons, whether they be, you know, in Asia and all over in Europe and stuff like that. I know that's also, there's a hurdle to kind of overcome there, but making things is probably the first thing. Good things. Sorry. I mean, like really trying to push yourself to say, is this good? Can I make it better? And showing it to other people and getting their feedback, and then doing those iterative passes where it starts to get better and better and better. Because that's what Pixar does. It's what Disney does to make the content, you know, because the first pass is not going to be the best pass, you know, but those subsequent passes where it gets tighter, smarter, funnier, etc., more emotional, that's when it's really going to start to be something solid. So I'm sorry. I hope that helps, Jamina.
No, it does. No, it actually just, you know, makes me feel like what I'm doing is the right path. Because, for example, I have this like idea that I've written the script. It's been like with me for 2 years now, and I've always imagined it to be in stop motion.
Uh-huh.
People were like, you should do it in two. Like, no,
Oh.
I've always imagined it in stop motion.
Uh-huh.
And now I just started animating it myself. So
Yeah.
that I just have like a scene, and then I
Uh-huh.
have that like as a like I can include that in my pitch package and be like, look, this is how it could look like, and it
Yeah.
can be better if you like, you know, collaborate with me or something like that.
I think
So,
that's terrific.
yeah, no, thanks for just making me feel more confident, and you know, just making me feel like, you know, yeah, I'm in the right path. So
Yeah.
thank
I mean, there's a guy here, Bobby Pontius, who, you know, was part of a Oscar nominated short film that they did on their own. And a lot of the groups, like all these Oscar nominated films, animated shorts this year, were folks who were working from home, you know, outside of their day jobs. It's really, to me, very exciting. And I was like, we were chatting with them for Disney, and I was like, you guys inspire us. You know that, you know, seeing these wonderful short films not made within the studio confines, you know, and being able to visually break barriers and tell different types of stories it's very inspiring. So Jamina, like, keep on doing what you're doing, because you're absolutely on the right path.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your question.
Yeah, so we're at like almost leading up to 12:30. So like, what do you think, Monty? So, Josie, thank you so much again for your time. We're kind of like winding down a little bit. And I guess I would want you to just kind of like have the last word of like, you know, for everyone out there around the world that is wanting to do what you are doing now, you know, as a female Asian American director at a big studio, you know, and someone kind of tuning in and looking up to you and just kind of, I want to do that someday. Are there any? Go ahead.
I feel like, you know, maybe this is a bit cliche, but like,
Nope.
we work really hard, you know, and I like that, the crazy work ethic that I grew up with my family, that I feel like has propelled me to where I am. I remember when I did graduate from CalArts and I could not find a job. It was really sad. It was my uncle who immigrated here from the Philippines, and he just told me, you know, you just apply. You know, he was sort of like, he's like, why don't you apply at Disney? And I'm like, you don't understand. That's Disney. That's, you know, I don't know. And he was like, I realized that he came from the Philippines. He actually was, he was a postal delivery man. And one day when I was 16, and my mom said, oh, give your Tito Jaime, give him your taxes, your 1040, he'll do it for you. And I'm like, he works at the post office. What are you talking about? I was such a snobby little teenager. And my mom said, no, he has an accounting degree in the Philippines. He was an accountant before he got here. And so like, there's a whole other life that he had. And so when he said, it was my Tito Jaime, said, just apply. What do you lose, right? And so I did, and I got the job, and my family is so proud. And, you know, like, putting myself out there, I feel like it was like who I am and who they are and where we came from and how hard we worked and what, like, the Philippines has endured, as many other countries around the world. I realized, like, what I was ashamed of as a kid and embarrassed about became my greatest strength. And like, then those are the folks that, when good or bad, they're just like, it looks wonderful, you know, like they're always cheering for you. And they're, you know, even when you as an artist, or, you know, I'm a perfectionist, so they're, you know, they're always like, no, what are you talking about? So that's where I think, you know, we can really find our core, right? Our those people that we know have our back no matter what. And that's why I was really like, I have to try, because Tito Jaime insists. And if I don't try, then I will, that's my biggest failure, is I didn't try. And so, and even if, I was always like, even if it doesn't work out, when I got into CalArts, when I got into Disney, I was like, there's a great chance that I won't be here, like that I will fail. but I have to try. And I knew that I was like, I have to try my best, not just try, but like, just so I know that I exhausted myself to the point where I knew I gave it my all. And then I can walk away. Do you know what I mean? Like, then I can know that I'm proud of myself. I can look my family in the eye and say, I tried and it didn't work out, but I'm okay with that. And that's all that matters, I think. And so even if this film, whether it makes it to the to be released or not, I'm just like, I know I have to try. And then if it doesn't work out, that's okay, you know, because I know that I did my best, and I have my family and my friends that will always support me no matter what. Oh my gosh, as they yell in the background.
Yes, that's amazing. And I actually saw someone in the chat said it's kind of like Zootopia's Try Everything song. So it's like that could be your life's theme song.
Yes. No, I will not keep everyone, but so Zootopia took place. It was like we were like, where does Judy live? And Rich Moore, when he also was born in Oxnard, California, which is where I was born. And he was like, it's about 50 miles from, the city, just kind of like Oxnard is from Los Angeles. And I really related to Judy kind of going into the big city and trying everything and failing. Look at me, I'm absorbing all that Disney propaganda. But thank you all for having me. I appreciate you all taking the extra time. And it was really great to be here. I'll do anything for you, Bobby, and Rise Up Animation. Wonderful to meet you, Monsi, and everyone. I hope one day to meet you all in person. I know, Monsi, you are at DreamWorks, is that right? Or no, forgive me.
I'm currently interviewing for places.
Okay.
But we shall see where it lands.
Well, I hope to work with you one day.
I hope so too. But thank you so much for your time today.
Of course.
Yeah.
Josie.
Thank you. I love you, Bobby.
You are salt of the earth. And,
one day, Bobby, we're gonna get together.
Please hire me for your next.
Well done.
Yes. Please hire.
Absolutely. Everyone send me. I absolutely will. Thank you all.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody. Monsi, Josie, Kingsley, you're on the call.
Thank you, Kingsley.
Enjoy your weekend, and hopefully we can see each other. Let's get our second shots, and we'll see each other again soon.
Love it.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Have a lovely weekend.
You too.
Thank you, guys.
Bye. Bye, everybody. Love y'all.